Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to the School Manager Part 15. In this week's exclusive training, I'm going to show you how to create this amazing dynamic month view calendar to display all the lessons and, of course, filter out by teacher, subject, class, student, along with these great drop-down lists. We can select month and year, complete navigation, dynamic calendar with dynamic starting dates. It's going to be a great training. I cannot wait. So let's get started. All right, thanks so much for joining me. As I said, we've got a great training for you, the month view. We've done day view, we've done week view, and now we are on to month view. It's going to be a really great training, and I can't wait to show you exactly what we have in store. I'm going to show you how you can build this incredible month view calendar, and we got filtering, we've got navigation, we've got a lot. So I hope you'll stick with us. It won't be too long of a training, but I got so many brand new things to show you. I really want to make you a part of this training. If you do like these trainings, I create them each and every Tuesday, brand new, exclusively just for those subscribers here. So if you want to get alerted, make sure you do subscribe. And of course, click that notification icon bell. What that's going to do is going to send you an email so you get alerted right when I create these new trainings. If you like live chat and you want to ask me questions, I'm available on live chat every single Tuesday to answer your questions. Also, I hope I can talk to you then and see you then. That'll be great. Also, brand new this month exclusively, my mentorship program is just $7 to start. And what that's going to do is going to give you 5 weeks of full content. That's almost 8 hours of training, and of course there's no obligation to continue. You can see what it's like, and I'm going to teach you how to define, design, develop, and deploy your own Excel applications for passive income through this incredible program. So many of our students are loving it, and I hope you will join us for that. So if you like that, click the link down below, and that's just $7. So you've got nothing to lose. All right, let's get started because I've got so much. This is the sample, right? We're going to be putting this away. This is what it's going to look like when we get done with the training today. So I'm just going to save this and we're going to close it out, and we're going to start up right where we left off last week, which was the week view. So this is a School Manager Part 15 week view. We've got nothing here for the month view. So we need to get started right away on this. And the day view, we started out, the week view, and now we're going to start the month view. What we'll do is we'll allow a few columns, right? We won't use all of the columns, so we'll probably start it out in CH. That way, if we want to add anything to the week view or we want to add something to the month view, we have. So I'm just going to hide these columns right now. We're going to start directly in CH. And CH, what we'll do is we'll put a specific day here. So I'm going to format this. Let's just say for our purposes, we'll put Sunday for now, just to get an idea. And then what I want to do is I want to just create all those to maybe, Saturday here. So I want to create, then maybe we'll make them about 20, let's say column width, probably about 20. Those are going to be dynamic days. And what do I mean by dynamic days? Well, it's going to basically start out, this Sunday is going to be based on what we're starting out. Inside the admin section, we have already created a start date here on Monday. So I want it to be dynamic, right? If I put Tuesday here, I want that start date on that month to show that Tuesday. So it's going to be extremely flexible for end users so that they can put any day of the week they want. Okay, but we want to format that and we want to make it look nice and pretty. And of course, we want to exclusively put a specific header. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight all this here, and then I'm going to go into the home, and I believe we've got a cell style on a table header here. That's what I'm looking at. I'm going to drop this down. We'll be doing a lot of formatting to start out, and then we'll get into the code. Okay, so that's kind of what I want it to look like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to format those cells, and I'm going to put a white border around it. So taking this border, we're already on white, so I'm just going to put outline and inside. You can't see it, but it's there. Okay, so that's going to do it. And then I want a subheader, and that's going to be basically the day of the week, right? 1, 2, or specifically the day of the month, showing just the single day, like 1, 2, 3, or 4. So what I want to do is I want to give that a specific cell style too. We have a subheader cell style here that we created. So that's what we're going to use. And basically, so if we put in 1 and then 2, I want those calendar days to show up here. But I want them justified on the right. So I'm going to put right justified. Okay, of course, we're going to put a formula in here. It's going to be dynamic based on that, but we get some idea. And then what I want to do is, let's say I want to put, let's say probably about 5 spaces, 5 lines here, and then I'm going to put the next day. So I'm going to have it something like this. I'm going to drop down, let's say 5 here. And then on row 9, I'm going to put that second day. So that second one's going to be right here. And then I'm just going to basically duplicate that each time. So I'm going to copy this here, put that down here, paste it here, here. So what I want to do is I want to have 6 individual rows separated by 5 lines. That means we can have, let's say, 5 lessons on 5 different lines. And then if we have more lessons in a single day, we can split it up into individual columns. So we can probably have 2 columns. So I'm going to have 6 of those total. So that's what I want, 6 of those. And so to do that, we can just, let's take a look now. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll put 5 and 6. So we're going to drop it all the way down to exactly row, let's say 40. We want the last row to be right around 38. So that's going to look good. That will give us. So let's format these. I'm just going to give it a little borders around there, and that way what we'll do is we'll keep the white border on the day. We'll put the black border inside, so that way we can differentiate between those, and that will help us out. That's going to be enough for the formatting, and I'm also going to color it that gray, our standard gray color. So I'm going to do the format cells, and I'm going to use the black color, and I'll just use the left and then the right, and then we'll do it on the center. The top we can keep as white, and the bottom we can keep as white. Let's go to the bottom as black. Okay, so we've got that, and I'm going to put a fill color on this as let's take a look at this standard gray. Click OK, and we'll see what we got. Okay, that's a nice look for our calendar. We've got a nice foundation for our calendar, and that's going to be sufficient. So we're good with that. Now what do I want to do is I want to make these days dynamic, again, as I mentioned, based on that start date. And of course, we're going to put in the formula. So to do that, we just need a few different formulas, and we're going to start out with the admin screen. So what I want to do is that we have a start day. So what is this? I'm going to use an uppercase in this. So I'm going to use upper, and I believe we've already, so let's take a look, equals upper. I want to use uppercase, and then start day. We have a start day. What is that start day? Well, that start day is here in the admin. We've already defined it as a named range, start day here. So in our admin, we've got that. So that's going to be equal. Okay, well, that's the easy part, but how do I get the next day? Well, what I want to do is I want to use a match, and I want to determine the next day. So if I'm going to look up Tuesday, how do I know the next day? Well, the next day is going to be basically, we're going to look for this. I'm going to look for Tuesday inside. I'm going to find it. If it's not the last day, if it's the last day here, I'm going to make it Monday. But if it's not the last day, I want to make it the next. So we can use match to determine that. But all I need to do is determine, is it Sunday? Is the previous day Sunday? If the previous day is Sunday, I need to make it Monday, and that's going to be AX4. So we're going to use column AX starting there. Okay, so we also have these under weekdays. Notice we've got a named range called weekdays. So that's going to help us in our match formula. So, okay, let's go back into the schedule and we'll run that formula. So it's not going to be Monday. What we're going to do is, and I also want everything on uppercase, so I'm going to do equals upper because I want it all in uppercase. And the first thing what we're going to do is I want to check if, I want to know, is it Sunday? If the match is going to be equal to 7, we can do 7, or we can do this. If we'll just say this here, we're going to check on the previous one, CH2 equals, I guess, Sunday. Then we know to make it Monday. Then we know this is going to be Monday. So then all we have to do is just say Monday, put in Monday. And otherwise, all we need to do is, otherwise we're going to use a match, and then we're going to use +1 match, determine, I'm going to look up this day, and I'm going to find out where it is, weekdays. That's the array we created. I want an exact match, so we're going to put 0. Okay, so we're going to look it up. And we're going to determine that's going to be 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever it is. So what I want to do is I want to index that. In this case, I'm going to index that match. And what's the index going to be? Index, the array, of course, is going to be weekdays here. So I'm going to index that. I'm going to match it. The row number is going to be there, but I'm going to increase the row number +1, right? I want the day after. Okay, and I want a column as 1, right? We're a single column we're focused on. Okay, great. So that's if it's, so here's if it's true, if it's the Sunday. Otherwise, we are going to simply find the next weekday down. Okay, we're going to close our loop here and then close the upper and then go out. Okay, so that's Wednesday. Now all I need to do is simply take this and bring it across accordingly. So now I can just bring it across accordingly. Okay, so now we have starting on Tuesday. So now all I need to do is change this day. If I change it back to Monday, it's going to automatically change on the schedule to Sunday, and then we'll start it out here. Let's go ahead and set it to Sunday, and then that way we'll end on a Saturday, and I think that's going to be good. All right, good. I like that. So now we've got the days. So now let's get the formula for the days. Now let's build up our days, our month days based on a selected month. Now what's it going to be? We need to add a little bit to this scheduler because I need to create some information, some hidden columns for our month view. So let's put that in now because I think we're going to need a bunch of fields to help us with that. So what do I want to start with? Well, I want to start out right down here, but let's move this up a little bit. We'll bring this one up here, and then we're going to start down here. I want to bring in probably just about, let's say, to 31 or so. I'm going to give these a purple color, and then we'll go in here. So basically, here's what I want. I want to know the month start. What is the first day of the month? And then what I also want to know, let's call this month start. And then I want to know the selected month number. That's going to be a drop-down list on our month. And I also want to know the selected year. What year? Because we're going to be also a drop-down list for year. And I want to know the month selected day, right? When we select a specific day, I want to know what day that is. And also I want the month header, so we can have the month because that's going to be a specific text, right, that we want. And I want the selected lesson date, right? I want to know the date of that. So we have the day and the date, both of those. And also the selected lesson width. I want to know the width because our lesson's going to have different widths. If for some reason we have 10, let's say we have 10 lessons in a single day, that width is going to have to be very, very small, right? It's going to be half of this. If we have 5, it's going to cover the entire length. But if we have 10 or anywhere between 5 and 10, we're going to have to split those lessons, right? So it's going to be half of the column. So I want to know the width when we expand it and shrink it. We're going to need to know that. So I want to know the width so that I can reset it to that. And also we need a year drop down. It's going to be like 1 or 2 or whatever it is. That drop down is going to be linked, okay, to this. All right, so that's going to be it for now. So the month start date. So for example, let's say the start date will be right around, let's say 5. Let's use a date 5/1. But what I really want to do in this case is I want to base it on the month and the year. So if the month is 5 and the year is 2021, I want to then create a date based on that. So how do we do that? Well, that's going to be based on the date. So we're going to use equals date, and then what is the year? It's going to be based on B26. And what is the month? It's going to be based on B25. So once we have that, and also it's going to be the first day of the month, so I'm going to use 1. So that's going to get us that date. And I'm going to put that in so we can see the year. I'm going to use the short date here. All right, good. So we also want to know the month selected date. So the select date, whatever that will put in, VBA will take care of that. The header is going to be based on the month. So I want to know that header. It's going to be a text. So again, let's do a formula here. Okay, so we're going to start with upper. Okay, so we need that uppercase. And then what do I want? I want the text. What text I want? I'm going to put it in text, and I want to format that. So basically, it's going to be based on that start date. And then I want to give it a specific format. So in the format, I want to show the full month. So I'm going to use 4 M's. I'm going to use a comma, and then I'm going to use 4 Y's like that. Close that out, okay, and then close it out again, double parentheses to close out the upper. And so this is what I want our header to be, May 2024. Okay, good. So we've got that. Now let's start to build out a little bit. So what I want to do is I want to build it out. In fact, probably what I'm going to do is I'd like to have here maybe a day view, something like time. So something like this. Let's click on day view here. And then what we'll do is we'll go over here. So I'd probably like to have something like this in the future. So I'm just going to copy this, something like this. I'm going to go all the way down here because what I would like to have is something like maybe a day view summary. I don't think we're going to get to it this week, but next week what I want to do is I want to show that here. So I'm going to paste that in here. Maybe I'll paste it down here, paste it right here so we can get a header. Okay, so this is going to be, we'll put a date here. Now I'm going to copy this here. Paste it here. I'm going to do merge and center here. And then I want the date. So this is going to be equal to, and I'll show you how that's going to work. I'll set those columns. Whatever our selected date is, let's say right about here, selected day here. Okay, B27 should be fine. So that when B27 equals a day, when we select any specific day, we can then show all the lessons in a specific day. So here's what I would like to do on that. Let's put a date, and I'm going to put it in a long form day, long date here. So what I want with this specific one is, let's bring that out here, bring it out here. Of course, this is just simply going to be the day, right? All we want to know is the number of lessons here and everything like that. So This is going to be the selected. Actually, what we can do here, I like this a little bit better so we can get a description on it. I'm going to put it right here. Instead of the name, I want to put the day here. Then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put this is going to be our selected day summary. So that when we select a day on the specific calendar, we don't need this shape here. And let me get rid of all the shapes that might have come with that copy and paste because we don't need them here. And then, all right, let's clear that out. Anything that might have come here. So our selected day summary is going to be here. So when we select any specific lesson or any specific day, I want the summary, and this can be a wide column. We're going to get to this next week, but I wanted to place it so you know what we've got coming up. I'll give it a border of top white border and then left and right, although you can't see it because it's in white, but it's there. Okay, so I like that there. Let's do the left border there. We need to do that so we can do a differential, maybe a double white border. Sometimes if you can't see it, all you need to do is just change it. Maybe we'll do a double white border, but then you can select here the color here and then here. Okay, so I like that. Let's take a look at that. That looks good. And then what we're going to do is basically have those selections. So we've got the calendar really set up, but why don't we, instead of going back and forth, why don't we get, now that we have everything here for our month view, what we should do now is get that VBA so we can start selecting that and we don't have to keep scrolling left and right on that. So how are we going to do that? Well, the first thing what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply copy the header here. Here's this is the day view. So I'm going to copy that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring it over to the month and I'm going to paste it right about here. So that's it already set up. So we have our month view header, and of course I'm going to rename it, but we do need to make some changes on that. Obviously it's not going to be day view. This specific month view, this header here is not going to be based on this. It's going to be based on what? We've set that up already, and it's going to be located right here inside B28. So we need to change that to B28. Once we reset the formula, we're going to need to reset that font color here. So notice it went back to black. So if we set it back to white here, just select on the shape here, set it to white, and then we'll hit bold, and then we'll increase the font to about 20 or so. Okay, so that's a good start there. We also have our filters here. That's fine here. There's no filters set, but if there's filters set, we're going to set them here. I do want that. And then we can make the adjustments accordingly to this. So this particular one is not going to be today. It's going to be this month. So we're going to change that text to call this, do it all in capitals, this month. And then we're going to expand that shape a little bit, probably to 0.9 or something like that so we can get it in. Then what I'm going to do is we can ungroup this. I'm going to click here. I'm going to ungroup it temporarily. We don't need to work with that. And then we can work with the individual shapes in here. I'm going to ungroup this one too because we're going to need to work with this navigation here. We can select that, and then we can also select this and this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out any macros that are assigned to it, just clicking assign macro and then clicking delete. It's hard to work with them sometimes when we have macros assigned with them, but once we take the macros out, we can then easier to move with the shapes. So I'm going to bring this over a little bit here, and I'm going to take this month. We're going to have this month, and then what I want to do is I want to have a drop-down list for the individual months, and I also want to have a drop-down list for the individual years. This pop-up calendar we're not going to need, but this we're not going to need because we're going to have drop-down lists, and then this arrow we can put over here. So we want to put in the space between, I want to put two drop-down lists. I want to put one for the specific months, and I want to put one for the specific years. But we need to create those months, right? We need a list of months. That's going to help us out. So why don't we put it somewhere down here? We can put it really anywhere here in the admin screen. It's fine here. We don't have any to make sure. And all we need to do is just put in January, and we put in capitals. And then all I'm going to do is just drop it down here, and then I'll give it a named range. So we'll go all the way to December here. So now that we have that, and we can call this months. Okay, that's good. That's good. And we can also do the same thing for years too. Years, we can create as many years. So why don't we do that here, starting in the current year, 2021, and then we'll do 2022, and then we can just bring this down a number of years, and then we can call this years. Okay, that's fine. And then we're going to call this years, and that's going to help us. We can expand that if we need to. So we have months and years, and that's what we're going to create our drop-down list from. So let's take a look back inside the scheduling. What we can do now is create those two different drop-down lists. So how are we going to do that? We're going to go into the developer, and we're going to go into insert and then forms, and we're going to choose this form here, this form control the combo box. So I'm going to bring it right down here. I want the same height, and I want as the specific month. So if we take a look at this height, we see that this height is 18. So I want to do the same thing. I want to create the exact same height there. So 0.18 actually. and then we got the same height. And I'm going to right click it and I'm going to format the control of that. So we know that with the input range is what we just created. So that's going to be months. So we have that there. And then also let's go back in there. And what I want to do is I want to assign this a specific cell link. Now remember, we did already create a specific cell for this, and that was down here, and that's going to be the month number here in B25. So all we need to do is select B25. And the month's drop-down lines is 8. Okay, so what that's going to do is automatically create a drop-down list that we have ready here inside here. So taking a look inside the drop-down list, we now see we have all the months. So when we select January, notice the date changes automatically to January. And here, down here, automatically that month changes to 1. Why did it change? Because this date is based on this date is based on this, and this is based on B24. So we have this here, so that way it changes automatically. Okay, also the year drop-down I'm going to assign to B31. The year is a little bit different because the years are here and here, so we need to update that. So 1 we want to change automatically. So I'll show you what that's like. All right, so back up here. So now we've got our specific list, and now what I want to do is I want to just shrink it as I want to choose the largest name. In this case, it's going to be September, and then I want to shrink this down to make sure that it's not any bigger than it needs to be. So right about 0.9, I think will cover it. Or maybe a little bit less, we can do 0.88. Just want to shrink it up here a little bit. Okay, that's sufficient. I'm going to use Control D and I'm going to duplicate that. But in this case, what I'm going to do is make this years, and I'm going to put it right here. So in this case, I'm going to format the control here, going into Format Control. And I'm going to go into this. This one's going to be years. And also the cell link in this one, of course, is going to be down here, B31. So I'm going to change this to 31. Click OK. All right, so let's take a look at that, and that one we can shrink up. We don't need that one as big here, so we can shrink that to about half the size. Right about 0.45 should be sufficient there. And maybe a little bit. Let's go 0.5, give it a little extra space. Okay, so I like that. So what I want to do now is to be able to simply select on a specific year or select on a specific month, and then have the date change and have the month refresh automatically. So we can bring that out to this perfect like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring the arrows in so we can have multiple ways to navigation. So holding down the control, I'm going to select each item here, and then I'm going to align them vertically here. I'm going to space them accordingly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here on the, let's take a look at the align here, and then I'm going to distribute horizontally, and that's going to set them horizontally. Then I can group them. Okay, great. So we've got our list. We've got our navigation here. As we change this, it's going to automatically change, but we do need to get this date changed. And we'll do that with a macro. A year, we'll add macros for year change, and we'll add macros for month change. So that's no problem. Okay, good. All right, so it's coming together very, very nicely. Now what I want to do is I want to get these dates, and I also want to get this month view. So let's work on the macros that are going to actually display this month view. So what we're going to do is we've already created some macros for day and week. All we have to do is build on month view for that. Now we see our month view is going to be based on columns CH all the way over to CP. Perfect. That's what I want. Now before we do that, what we want to do is we want to take everything here as we have, and we want to create a specific group based on that. So we have all of our shapes here accordingly, and we're going to add these shapes too. All these shapes, and we're going to group them. Okay, right after we group them, we need to do two things. One, we need to go to the size and properties. We need to make sure that we are moving but not sizing. That's into the properties here. Second thing we do is we need to make sure we give it a name. So we're going to give that name, and I believe it's called month header group. Okay, that's the name. So that's the group that we're going to associate with in VBA that we can hide or show that group. Okay, saving our work so far, and then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going into the VBA and displaying it. So I want columns CH through CP to be displayed along with the associated group shape when the user clicks that month button. So we can do that inside VBA. So let's go inside VBA, and then we're going to take a look. Now we're going to be focused on a specific macro and module, and that's going to be called the schedule miscellaneous, because that's where we have it. We have hide all views. So again, month view group, I think we called it let's change it to view. All right, I had a header, but let's change it back to view. So notice there was a differentiation. So it's not header. Let's call it view, month view group. View. That's fine. Anyway, as long as we get the name right, view group. Okay, so we've changed the name, and now all we need to do is uncomment that because we now have a shape located on that. So that's going to hide everything. So all we need to do, and we're going to go to BZ. We need to make sure we hide all the columns in that one. So let's take a look at all those columns. We want to hide everything all the way up to, in this case, CP. So we can, let's just put these, I give them a little bit of a color so we can see that in case it's not hidden. And then, so what we're going to do is I'm going to hide everything up into CP, everything. That's for the hide all macro, hide all, CP. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we individually show the day view, we show some columns, the week view, we show some, and then in this case, month view. So we've commented out. Now what we can do is we can reset that or uncomment that out and then up view. So this case, we've got schedule hide all views. That's perfect. Stop calculation. I'm going to comment that out. We don't need that right now. That's going to turn off screen updating and application. So we don't need that in calculation. So we don't. This is going to be called month view refresh, but we haven't written that macro yet. So of course it's not. I'm going to comment this out just in case. And of course this is going to be called month view group. And the columns, remember, what are the columns? They are CH through CP. So let's update those columns right here instead of O through BB. CH through BCP, CP. Okay, and that's called the month view group. Perfect. So that's what I like it. And this is the macro that we're going to assign to the specific month view button. Now we have 3 different buttons. We have one for day view, we have one for week view, and we have even one for month view. So that's just what I'm going to do. We can probably, on this one, we can probably just do the refresh because this is already on month view. So when we click day view, so let's go back to day view here, and then we can assign that macro that we just created, that we just updated, called month. So then I'm going to hold down the control under both shapes here. I'm going to right click it. I'm going to assign that macro and I'm going to paste that specific in. Or if not, you can always find it under schedule month view here. Schedule and then show month view. That's the one I want. That's the one I'm focused on here. Copy that, click OK. All right, so now when I click that, it shows the month view. And now when I click that, it's going to show the week view. Now the week view is a different button, right? A different set. So again, we need to assign the month view to this. Right click here, assign the macro, and then we paste that macro in right here. Pasting's not working here. Schedule, month view, no problem. I probably didn't show month view. That's okay. That's the one we want. So clicking on there, okay. Now we're showing the month view. I do want this section to show when we select a specific lesson, even on the month view, I want to show all those lesson details. So we've got day view, we've got week view, and now we've got month view. Okay, now we've got our calendar looking really good, but all we need to do is start in the formula so we can get the days right based on the selected month and the year. And of course, it's all going to be dynamic based on the start date. So the first thing what I want to do is I want to get that start date into a number. What do I mean by that? I want to know Sunday is 7, or I want to know Monday is 1. So what we want to do is want a start day number. I'm going to call this start day number. And inside here, I'm going to put a formula. And I'm just going to be basically a match based on that start date. So equals match. And what am I'm looking up the start day. We've already defined that inside a named range. And based on the weekdays, so also another named range, and I want an exact match. Okay, so what that's going to do is going to put that in just as 7. So we have that here. And now also what I want to do is I want to assign a named range to this. We're going to call this start day number. Okay, so that's going to help us also in the formula so we don't have to refer to the specific cell. Okay, so now that we have that, that's going to help us. So the first thing what we want to do inside the schedule is start a formula on our first day of that. So what we're going to do is, in this case, it's going to be equals if, and I want a weekday in this case, and we're looking for, what are we looking for? I'm looking for, in this case, B24. That is the first day of the month, B24. Remember, we've set that up here, so that's what I want to focus on. Weekday of B24, going to make that absolute because we're going to use that in case we need that. And then 2, remember 2, our weekdays start on Monday, right? So we need to use the number 2 here. That's what I want to use. So we're going to look for that. If that is going to equal the start day, that's the one we just created. Remember the start day number, let's put that in there, start day number, that's the one I want. If it's equal to that, then what we're going to simply do is just show the B24. Show B24. This is all we need to show if it's the exact start date starts on that. Otherwise, We don't need to show anything. We need an exact match here. Otherwise 0. Otherwise we're going to show 0. Perfect. So that's it. So that's basically if we're starting on this day, if it starts on Sunday, if it's a match, then all we need to do is show that date. Otherwise I just want 0. That's it. So what about the next day? It gets a little bit more trickier than this day because it's based on a specific day. So here we need to know if this is 0, then check. If it's not, if this is 1, right, all we need to do is add 1. So it's easy. But if it's not, then we need to do a formula. So equals, in this case, if CH3 here does not equal 0, then basically what are we going to do? We're going to show CH3 plus 1. Otherwise, we need to check if the weekday here, we're going to use that weekday command, again, based on B24 here, also 2, okay, and then what I want to do is, if it's equal, mod start day number, right, equals start day number, then what I want to do is 7, right, we want to use the 7 as the divisor. We're dividing by 7, we want to know, and we're adding 1 plus 1, right, because we're adding 1, we want to know if it's equal to B24. There, if it's equal to that, then we're going to set it up. So in this case, again, B24 here, okay, putting that in, comma, if it's not that's first start date, we're just going to put double quotes. All right, let's just update this. I'm going to put these double quotes here, and then we'll do this one here, double quotes, making sure everything's the same here. Put this one also in double quotes so that everything's consistent. Okay, what we're going to do now, we're going to bring that formula across, all the way across, and then we're just going to make a few updates. So we're going to bring it all the way across. In this case, start day number. In this case, the next day is going to be plus 1. The next day, we're going to do plus 2. Here, again, we're going to do plus 3. Okay, great. All right, and then plus 3, and then we're going to do plus, changes to plus 4 here under plus 4. And then the last one, we're going to do plus 5. And we're in September now. I'll go to May and make sure it starts with there. So we're going to change this to May of 21, which is where we have most of the data as well. Changing this to date. Okay, good. That's what I like. Now all we need to do is we have the date. All I want to do is format that according. All I want to do is show the numbers. So again, I'm going to highlight everything, all of our dates, so we can format them all at the same time here. Going down here, again, highlighting this and highlighting the last row so we can make sure that everything gets formatted. So basically it's going to be a date, but I want to show only that single day. So I'm going to go into more number formats. And in this case, date, basically what I want to show is a custom. So in this case, I don't want to show, I just want to show the D. That's it. Only that day in this case. So if we take a look here, we're showing 1. Great. So now we have it. So now all I need to do is simply say equals this plus 1. And then the same thing here, equals, because we're always going to equals this day plus 1. Okay, perfect. So now all I need to do, again, copy this down here, do the same thing here for each row, and then we're going to make a few modifications on the last specific, right? Not on the last or the second to last row. We do need to make changes because what I don't want to show is the dates that are not in the month. So we don't know exactly where they're going to end up, so we can start it right here. So we're going to make a little bit of a formula here on this specific month to see if we're going to do that. All right, so on the B27, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check something here. If, typing out if, in this case, the month, I want to check to the month. If the month of CN21 plus 1 is not equal to the month of CN21, if it's a different month, then show nothing. If the month of CN21 does not equal the month of CN21, we know it's a different month, the previous and the next day, then what do I want to do? Then don't show anything. Then otherwise show CN21 plus 1. But what if, in this case, what if CN, the one above, is nothing? I want to show nothing as well. So we can do something like this here, if CN, in this case it would 21, equals empty, then show empty. Otherwise, we're going to double check. So then we close the parentheses out, and there we go. So it's going to be 23. Now what we can do is I'm going to do the same thing, pretty much similar to this, just changing the cell. So I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to bring it over here. So in this case, it's going to be 27. So we're going to change this to 27. In this case, we're going to change it to the cell to the left. So that's going to be this one, CH27. The same thing here, CH27 here. and also the same thing here. So we just need to make that update on this single, and then what we can do is we can just copy, and also this one here. So the 4 instances that we need to correct. Okay, so we have if ch27 equals empty, then show empty. Otherwise, if the month of ch27 plus 1 does not equal the month of ch27, then show nothing. Otherwise, increment it 1 day and hit enter. Okay, so now all I need to do is just drag this over here to show this, and I'm going to copy this, all the formulas here, and then I'm going to paste them right down here. And there we go. So it's the last day is not shown. Perfect. That's exactly what I like. Okay, we'll give this the color, the background color. Now we've got our calendar. Now we've got our dynamic calendar built. So when I change the dates to a different month, it's automatically going to update those days. Not going to show the last day. Okay, fantastic. We've got that. Now we're ready to build in our calendar and bring in those lessons inside the calendar. All right, to do that, we're going to head back inside VB. Here we go. And it was this schedule month view, this refresh. This is the macro that I'm going to create. It's commented out now, but this is the one I want to create. And we're going to go, we've got modules for schedule day view. We've got modules for schedule week view. So we might as well create one for schedule month view. So we're going to, again, insert a module. In this case, we're going to click on the properties, and we're going to call it schedule month view. Schedule month view, being consistent with our names, month view. Okay, so the first one we're going to write is that sub. We've already copied it. It's the paste month view refresh. And to do that, we're going to need some basic types of variables, but we've got a lot of the things, a lot of it saved up inside week view and day view. We have the refresh, so we're going to just start out with that, and then we're going to do a lot of modifications based on it. So here's what we're going to start. I'm just going to copy all of this, and then we're going to make a lot of modifications based on that. So I'm going to copy this one, and what this is the week view refresh. So then I'm going to simply go into our new module here, month view, and paste that in. First thing we want to do is make some differences between our variables here. So the thing we want to do is, okay, we need last row, we need last result row because we do have to run our advanced filter. We also need the result row. Schedule row and schedule column are both long, but we don't need the duration and we don't need the detail row because we're not setting our widths, our height based on the duration, and we don't need the detail. The detail is going to basically be the text inside, but the text is going to be very basic. All we're going to do is put the time and the name, so we don't need a detailed one. Now, as far as the others are concerned, we don't need teacher row, we don't need type row, we don't need room row, we don't need any of these. So we can basically just clear that out because we're not going to be setting those up. So we don't need that. We only use that in that specific. Also, the view by string, we don't need that. Room, class type, we don't need. Lesson color, we do want to have lesson color. So we'll keep lesson color, which we'll need. And we also want the lesson ID. We don't need the lesson string. We don't need the teacher string, right? So we do need the lesson ID because that's going to be part of our shape as we build out our shape. So what else are we going to need besides that? We're going to need the lesson text, right? I'm going to set that inside. We have it here as string, but I'm just going to bring it up here to make it a little bit easier. And then we'll put a comment out of that, comma, and then we can clear that out. So the last column, we don't need that, all right? There's no going to be last column. We did only use that for the week view. And also the lesson shape is shape and the icon shape. We're not going to be adding icons. It would be a little bit slow, and we don't have the space for icons. So we don't need icons, and we'll get rid of that inside the code. Start date and lesson date, we need both of those. The lesson start as date and the lesson date, we do need those. And the duration and the schedule interval, we don't need those as double, but we do need some other things. What do we need as double? I need a lesson width, and we're going to put that into a variable. So the lesson width as double, and I also need the lesson left as double. So we're going to use those. We don't need the lesson. Again, in this case, we're going to call it left. We need both of those as double because I want left position also with that. Also, I don't need any variance on this, so we can get rid of that. And we do need some long variables we're going to add to our long variables up here. So we need a few more so we can build that out. Okay, so let's make the updates there. So in this case, what I want to know is I want to know the calendar row, and I also want to know the calendar column. So both of those are going to be long variables. So we need to keep track of that so we can find the specific date. So calendar column as long. I also want to know how many lessons are in a day. Day, because we need to know that day, lesson, count as long. and also the lesson number. As we loop through the lessons in a specific day, we need to keep track of the numbers as long. So we're going to need that. Okay, that's going to be it for now. We may add a little bit more later on, but I think we've got everything covered there. And the lesson shape is a shape. That's the only shape. The two strings here that we're going to need here. And let's take a look at lesson start as a string. Lesson start could be a date or a string. I think it's going to go fine. Okay, but we do need to add a little bit more I'm going to save our work as we work through this. But what we're going to do is I want to do things a little bit different here in this. Here is our lesson database. Here's our results. But I want to add a little bit on to this. I want to know the class name of this, and I want to know I'm going to be sorting these, right? So as we go through them, I want to know the first lesson of the month, and it's going to be based on the start date and start time. What does that mean? If I have, let's say I have, take a look at this. If I've got 3 lessons on the 15th, I want to know which one. The start time, let's format that so we can see that just a little bit. And I'm going to format that as, let's just say a time, right? So what I want to know is what's the first lesson on the 13th? Like this one's at 8 o'clock, this one's at 11:45. So I want this one, the 8 a.m. to appear first. So I want to sort it based on not only the date, but the time as well. The best way to do that is to combine them into a single cell. And we can do that, but I also want the class name. I want to bring in that. Notice we don't have the class ID, we have the class ID, but I want the class name. And I can bring that in with a formula. So what we'll do is we're going to add formulas onto the results, and we can start them just the last 2 columns. And so once we get our results, then all I need to do is bring down those formulas. So we're going to start out in CQ1. That's the first one we're going to put a formula. And I'm going to put these in yellow so that we can differentiate. We know that those are specific formulas, so we can easily see that and recognize that those are formulas. So what I want is I want that class name, and I want that class name based on this class ID. So all we need to do, again, is just run an index match. So let's do that. Equals if error, and then I'll do is I'll bring it down. As we get the results, I'll bring that down. So index, what am I going to index? I'm indexing the class name. We have that inside a variable here, class name. So that's what I'm going to be indexing. Where am I going to find that? I'm going to find it based on the class ID. So to get that, we need to run a match formula. In the match formula, we're looking up this specific class ID. And then what I'm going to do is going to be based on the class ID. So class ID we already have here. And then we want an exact match, so that's going to be 0. And we want the column, so that's going to be 0. If there's an error, we want to show no blanks. Okay, so what that's going to do is add that class. As we bring that formula down here, it's going to all automate. And that way we can clear it up. We don't have extra formulas, but only when we need them. Also, what I want to do, again, is I want the date and the time. And that's very, very easy. All we need to do is simply add them together, since it's basically math. The start date, which is going to be located here in CB3, plus our start time, which is CD3. So as we bring this formula down, notice we have them combined. Then what I do, once we get all of our results, I'm going to sort it based on this, the earliest to the latest. That way, when we add them to our calendar, we can do that. So that's it. That's all we need to do. Now, keep in mind that once we get to the last row here, we determine the last row, then we bring down our formulas based on the first row, 3, and the last row, in this case, 23. So we can bring that down. Then what we could do is we have the results based on that. Okay, great. So we've got that. That was just some additional fields that we're going to need, and then we can add those in. But everything else is going to stay the same. We're going to keep our criteria the same. We're going to change our lesson dates to the first of the month, the lesson date to the last of the month. That's automatically based on the B4 and B5 of the scheduling. So that's going to, again, everything else can stay the same. That's why we build consistency throughout our day, week, and month view. We can use the same results in each. We don't have to rebuild them each and every time. Okay, so knowing that we're going to be bringing down, that's going to help us moving forward. So we're going to be adding into that. So the first thing what we want to do is, of course, make sure that we clear out. I also want to set B3. This times B3 is going to be month. So let's take a look at, let's put that in first before we forget. So we want to set the schedule change to true. That's going to be fine. And then what we just make sure that before we exit that, we set them to false in case we need to exit. So that's good. Okay, we're going to clear the contents of the lesson fields. That won't change. Schedule change to true. That won't change. B3 month view. For each lesson, we're going to clear out all the lessons. That won't change. Nothing that we're going to be doing in that change. Okay, also we're going to run our results. We need to run with the lesson database. I want to get those results of the advanced filter. I want all of the lessons in that specific month, right? Based on B4 and B5. So this won't change, right? So this, we're going to determine the last row with lesson 4. We're going to exit the sub, reset calculations. that's fine. Again, we're going to copy the formulas down here, N1 through R1, in case they're going to copy those formulas. That's in our original data, just to review. Remember, we're copying formulas down in our original data, subject type, to bring all that in from the class. And so theoretically, we could add in class name here too, or we could put it in the results. Either way, it's fine. But we have that here. So we still need to bring in those formulas. So that's not going to change. And then all we're going to do is application cut copy mode. We're going to bring in our results. Nothing changes on our results. It's still going to come through CP. However, when we get our last row, we've got our last row, assuming that we do have results, right? The last results. Then this is where I want to copy down that formula, right? We have all of our results. Our results are going to come to CA2 through CP2, right? Our results are going to come in that column right here. So once I determine the last row, in this case 23, I'm going to bring down those formulas. All I need to do is make a formula to formula copy. Now, formula for make sure, the only thing is make sure that this is going to be your first row of data. Notice I use the first row of data. That when we copy it down, it's automatic. So let's do that right now. Let's write a little bit of code to do just that. So we're going to use back inside the VBA editor right here. Let's put in copy down class name, and let's call this lesson date and time formulas. Okay, so dot range, we're still on CQ3, CQ3 through CP, and the last results row. Make sure we have the right variable. And the last result row, dot, not dot for value, but dot formula is going to be equal to what? It's going to be equal to basically dot range CQ1, that's where our formula is located, all the way to CP1, that's where our formula is, and dot formula. That's going to bring down that formula all the way down there. So we've got to bring it down all the way. Now what we're ready to do is I want to sort. Remember I said I also want to sort based on date. So we've created a sort before inside this program. So the best way to do it is just to run the find and find where we've done it before, and then just copy and make those changes. A little bit faster than rewriting. So in our current project, I'm going to look for dot sort. I'm going to find next. This will be just fine. So I'm going to copy that here. I'm going to close this one out, and I'm going to paste dot sort right here. So with dot sort, we're on Sheets. Now we need to change the database, right? We're on lesson. We need to change this to lesson database. And of course, we're going to sort. What are we sorting on? Let's drop this down a little bit. We're sorting it on based here on our results, our first row. In this case, it's going to be CR3. So that's where we have to set our results on. So let's go ahead and make that update. It's going to be CR3 is where our results are. So we'll change this to CR3. And what about our data? Our data is going to be located, it's going to start all the way from, in this case, CA3, and it's going to go all the way through CR. So we're going to update that. So let's make that update. In this case, it's CA through CR. And check our variable, make sure it's correct. Last result row. I'm going to make sure it's exactly the same. Last result row. Okay, and also we want to make sure it's ascending, right? Not descending. In this case, we want the newest value first. Okay, so now that we have that CA3 through CR in the last result row, now we're ready to loop through our. So basically, I've got our results. I've got it. We've sorted by this date. We have the earliest time. Now what we're going to do is we're going to simply run our loop, looping through the first one. And I also want to determine how many lessons are in a single day. I want to know that. Why is that important? Let's run through that and determine why that's important and how we're going to figure that out. Okay, so we've got our day here. So what do I want to do? Let's take this sample lesson right here. I'm just going to copy this and create a little sample here. Okay, so let's say our first lesson is right about here. Let's say we have one lesson. How many lessons are we going to fit in a day? So we'll duplicate 2, 3, 4. I think about 5 maximum, right, in a single day. But what if, let's take a look at this, or all right, bring those down here, something like this, right? And we can bring it down. So we have about 4 or 5 that we can do maximum. Now if we base them on the rows, right, the row height, we can do about 5, right? So that's fine. 5, we can squeeze in 5 there. But what if there's more than that? Well, if there's more than that, what I want to do is I want to shrink it in half. And then I want to shrink another one in half like this. So let's say there's anywhere from up to 10, I want each lesson to look basically like this. Let's say there's 6, 7, 8, or 9 lessons in a single day. I want it to look like this. I want to split them like that. So we're just showing a little bit. So to do that, I need to determine how many lessons are in a day. If the lessons are more than 5 lessons in a day, if it's more than 10 lessons, I'm just going to limit it to 10. I'm only going to show 10 in a single day because we have to limit it somehow, otherwise we have no space. And what we'll do, of course, when we select on a day, maybe we'll be able to show all the lessons here in this area. So that might be better. But we do, of course, we do have the day view if we want. We can also make it if we double click on a day here or something like that, it goes to the day view. That's another option. So basically, if we have anywhere from 1 to 5 lessons, we're going to show them the entire width. If we have anywhere from 6 to 10 lessons, we're going to show them at half their width. Okay, so that's what I wanted to demonstrate for you. So that's what we're going to look. Now that we understand the different conditions based on the number of lessons in a day, we can continue with the code. So for results row, so we're going to loop through our results. Let's escape out of there and undo that, whatever we just did. So for result row equals to the last result row. We're going to run that loop. First thing we want to do, of course, we have to get that lesson ID, which is fine. And then we also want the lesson date. I need to get that lesson date. That's very important. So lesson date, make sure that we have the variable right, equals, where are we going to find that lesson date? Well, the lesson date is going to be located not exactly here, but in a specific field in our results. And this is called the lesson date. Okay, so the lesson date, let's take a look at the results as they come in the lesson database here, and we can find those right here in CB, column CB. So we're going to change this to CB. So now that we've got our lesson date, also get the lesson start date. So now we see the lesson date go to the capital, we know it's correct. Lesson start, it's equal to what? Now I want to format this lesson start. I want to put it in a specific format. So I'm going to do format in this case, and it's going to be based on CD, right? Our CD is where our start is results are. So it's going to be, and what kind of format do I want to give it? Well, I want to give it basically the same format that we do with everything else. So it's going to be, how do we know what format we want? Well, I want it based on this format. So if we copy in here and we see, we take a look at this, we've got a format here. So if I go into home and I click on the custom and manage number formats, this is the format that I'm looking for here. So why don't we just simply copy that format or use something very similar to that, and then we can do it. So I'll just copy this part here is sufficient enough. And then I'm going to go back inside our code and I'm going to paste that into the format. So inside quotation marks, that's going to paste. We don't need the colon there. Okay, so we've got 409 HMP, and I'll make these a little bit smaller because I want to take up as little space as AM, PM. Okay, so that's sufficient for our lesson. That's the lesson start time. So we've got the lesson start time, and now what I want to do is I want to determine the text of the lesson, the text, right? What we're going to show in that shape is going to be equal to lesson text. Basically, it's going to be the start date and the start time. So lesson text is going to be equal to the start, lesson start, which is formatted already, lesson start. And also, let's add a space in there. And then I also want to add in the lesson where, remember, we want to add in that class name. Where's that class name going to come from? That class name is going to come directly from CQ, whatever row. So all we need to do is just add that in there. The formula's already brought that in. So we can copy this and then just update it to CQ. And so this is going to be CQ, so that we have the lesson time. It's going to appear inside our shape. Call this the lesson time and class name. Okay, so we've got the lesson text. We're going to place that in the shape. So now I want to do, I want to know how many, remember, it's important to know how many lessons are scheduled in a single day. Now we have this variable that we created here, and it's called day lesson count, So that's the one I want to do. So we're going to use that, and we can determine how many lessons are in a day. So the day lesson count is going to equal to, we can use the application worksheet function. And what is that function there? We're going to use, again, COUNTIF. Why do we use COUNTIF? So let's do that. Count.COUNTIF. We're counting if based on the date. So what is that? COUNTIF. And then what I want to do is I want to create a variable, and let's say based on the results of those dates. So we can add that in now. I want dynamic named range. So I haven't created that, but I'm going to add it now. I'm going to call it lesson date result date. Let's call lesson dates results. So I want the based on that. Notice I put them in brackets. Now that's not created yet, but we're going to create it in just a moment. So I'm going to copy that. And basically we're going to count it based, so we're going to count it only if it's based on the current date. So what is that going to be? Lesson date. So that second argument is the counting if it's equal to the lesson date. So that's going to get the number of lessons in the current, not the current date, let's say the lesson date, called lesson date, because that's what as we loop through all the lesson dates. Okay, so now I said we need to create a named range based on this. So let's do that right now. So inside the formulas, name manager, we're going to click on new, and we're going to paste it in. That's the name we want, and it's going to be equal on this specific sheet, equals, we're going to say offset. Obviously we want to create an offset because we want it dynamic. It can be based on the first, we're going to based on the first header row, so it's going to be lesson date here, comma, one row down, and then comma, comma, and then count A. And then what do we want to count? I want to count all the ones that have it. So all the way up to, let's say, 99999, and then subtract 1 for the header, comma, 1. And then close it out, and then tab through, make sure it contains all the data that we want, which is click OK, and click close. Okay, we're going to save our work with Control S, and then we're going to go back in. So now this is going to keep track of how many lessons in a day. Now what we need to know is it greater than 10? If it's greater than 10, we need to set the limit to 10 because I don't want to show more than 10. If day lesson count is greater than 10, then day lesson count equals 10. Set limit of lessons to show in a day to just 10. Okay, no more than 10 because we figured it out. We can't show more than that. It'll be too small or too difficult. Okay, so now what I want to know is it greater than 1? Is the day lesson count, is it greater than 1, so that we can make some adjustments. So let's copy this here. And then what we can do is just paste it down here and make the adjustment. If it's greater than 1, then what I want to do is I want to set a lesson number, right? The lesson number, we're going to loop through all the lessons in a day. So if there's 7 lessons inside a day, I want to keep track of what lesson we're on. Are we on lesson 1 of that day? Or are we on lesson 2? And that's important because we need to know what position, right? Lesson 1 is going to show up here. Lesson 2 is going to show up here, 3, 4, and 5. If there's 6 lessons, lesson 1 is going to show in the upper left. Lesson 6 is going to show in the upper right. So we need to keep track. I need to loop through all the lessons in a specific day. So we need to keep track. So if the day lesson count is greater than 1, then I need to set the lesson number. So how will we do that? We're going to do something like this. Then the lesson number is going to be equal to the lesson number plus 1. So it's going to increment. We keep going through the increments until we reach the lesson count. Until we reach the maximum, then we reset it back to 0 or back to 1. Okay, else, then what? Else, what are we going to count the lesson as? Then the lesson number equals 1. Else, the lesson number equals 1. And so what does that mean? If there's only one lesson in a day, if there's only one lesson, the lesson number is going to stay at 1. Otherwise, we're going to increment the lesson up 1 because it's greater than 10. So that's all we're doing. We're either incrementing the lesson number or setting it at 1. Okay? All right, so now we've got that. Let's say then we need else, then. All right, so now we've got that. So what's the next line of code? So what I want to do, now that we've set the number, so now what we want to do is I want to get the row and the column, okay? But basically what I want to do is I only want to get, so I want to determine where am I going to put this on the calendar, right? I need to find, let's say it's the first date. If it's the first date, I need to know what column this is. And I also need to know what row to put it in. So we need to determine that, but I need to determine it by finding the days. Now there's several ways to find a date. The fastest one, believe it or not, is a for next loop. So what I want to do is I want to loop through the columns. What are we going to start at? We're going to start at column number 86. What are we going to end at? 92. So if we're starting at 86 and 92, I also want to loop through the rows. I want to loop from 3 to 9 to 15, right? So basically I'm going to go all the way from 3 to 33, and I'm going to, in this case, we're going to simply step through it, and we can use step 6, right? So we're going 3 to 9. So we're going to loop through the columns and loop through the rows using step. So let's write that up. Basically, I'm just going to determine, is the lesson date equal to this? If not, continue. So we're going to loop through all of these on every single lesson. Believe it or not, it's very fast. It takes about a second for this thing to refresh. So I was happy with the speed, so that's fine. So the for next loop in this case. All right, so let's write that up. So, but I only want to loop through that if it's larger, if the lesson number equals 1. In other words, only on the first lesson do I need to get the date and column. Otherwise, I know where to put it. I know it's going to be down here, down here, down here. But only on the first one, lesson number 1, do we have to determine the column? Do we have to determine the row? So let's do that right now. If the lesson number equals 1, then what are we going to do? Then we're going to set the column and set the row. Then set the column and row for lesson. Okay, so only if it's 1. So let's start our loop now. For calendar row is going to equal 3 to 33. Right? Remember, starting on the first row here, we're going all the way down to 33, and we're going to step 6. Right? Only concerned about where those dates are. Step 6. Okay, so we step through 6 times. Okay, so now what we do is we're going to bring it through. Now we need to focus on the column. For the calendar column is going to be equal to 86 to 92. Basically, I'm looking for the row and I'm looking for the column that date is found. Next calendar column, and also next calendar row. Always close our loops, okay? So we've got that nice tight loop here that we're going to be working through. So within that loop, I basically need to check it. If the schedule dot cells, we're using cells because both the row and the column are dynamic. Again, in this case, we're going to use calendar row, calendar column dot value equals lesson date. Then we can set the row. Then if it's equal, if this value here is equal to the lesson day, if this is equal to lesson day, or this, or this, or this, then we know we can set the calendar row and we can set the calendar column, right? So we know exactly where to place that lesson shape. So we can do that right here. So here, all we need to do is simply say the schedule row, that's the one we're going to be using, equals the calendar row. The schedule column is going to equal the calendar column. Set, let's do this, set lesson row, and then we're going to do set lesson column. Set lesson column. Okay, very good. So we've got that. We've set up the row as we loop through and we look for those dates. So we next calendar column, next calendar row, all of our variables are set. Okay, now we can move on. So now what we want to do is we want to loop. So once we've created that, but else I want to know something else. Else, what if it's not 1? Else, then what do we do? So in other words, this is only for column row for the lesson. If the lesson number is, what if it's not 1? If it's else, then if the lesson I need to do is determine, I need to set that column row. What if it isn't? Like, in other words, if it's not, though, I need to set it to 6. I might need to set it to 6. If the lesson ID, the lesson number is 6, I'm going to put it up at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the right side, 9, 10. So if it's more than 6, so we need to determine that. So if the lesson number is equal to 6, then schedule row is equal to the schedule row minus 4. And I'll explain this in a moment. Else, schedule row equals the schedule row plus 1. So let's assume we have 6 lessons in a day, 6 lessons. The first one goes here on the left side, second, third, fourth, fifth. If for some reason, if now the lesson number equals 6, where does 6 going to go? It's going to go up at the top here. So I need to subtract 8, right? I need to subtract 4. If it's 8, I need to go all the way up to 4, right? And put it at 4. Else, but if it's not 6, then we just need to go. So basically, we're incrementing the lesson row. And as soon as it reaches the 6th lesson, we need to go back up to the top on the right. Okay, so that's basically only for lessons with more than 6 in a single day, if it's equal to 6. So now we've compensated for that. Okay, very good. Okay, now once we've located the right schedule and the right row, we can get out of there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, and then create lesson. Create lesson. We can skip everything out of that. So here we can have create lesson. We're going to create the lesson now. So create lesson. Okay, so basically it's going to skip out of that loop once we do that. So now that we have create lesson, now we're ready to write the rest of it. Okay, so now we can make changes and make the update to the code accordingly. First thing I want to do is make absolute sure that we actually have a scheduled row and actually have a column. If either one of them are 0, we cannot go on. So we can do that with a loop. If the schedule row equals 0 or the schedule column equals 0, then go to, we just want to skip everything else, go to, and then we'll call it next lesson. Okay. So that way we can go. Then all the way at the bottom here, right above the loop, right where we have the next result row right here, here we can do this. We can right here's next lesson. So create that so it skips everything if for some reason there's a missing column or missing row. Okay, now that we've checked for that, we can continue on. Here, check here again for missing row or column. Okay, so now that we've checked that, we can continue on. So now what we want to do is I want to set the lesson color. What is going to be that lesson color? The lesson color in this case is going to be equal. I think we already have that here. Actually, we can just get rid of that. Okay, so we don't need this. We do need the lesson ID. So let's put that in here. The lesson color we already have. Where's that? It's here. So let's update that. We've got the lesson. Let's remove some of the things we don't need. We don't need the lesson ID. We don't need the duration rows. We don't need the duration. We've already determined the schedule row. We've already determined the schedule column. This is for day date, right? This is for the weekday dates. We don't need any of that. We don't need a weekday. Remember, we're looking for weekdays. We don't need that. We already have determined the lesson start date. Here also, this was how we built the lesson text. On our larger schedules, we put a lot of text into this shape. And this one we've already built. Notice the lesson text equals all this. This one particularly, we're not gonna need this. So we can get rid of that. We're going to use it actually when we expand the lesson. In other words, when I click on a lesson and I want to expand it, only then are we going to add the text in. We don't need it if it's so small, so we can get rid of that. Okay, so B10, we probably don't even need to put that. We only need to put that in when we select a lesson, so we can get rid of that too. We don't need that. Okay, so this is going to save us a lot. Okay, we'll save our work so far. So now we've got the lesson. We just removed a lot of things that we didn't need. So now we've got the lesson color. We've already had that. And continuing on, now what we want to do is we're ready to set the lesson shape. So the lesson shape is going to be here. The scheduled shape change, we're going to duplicate that. That's fine. We're going to keep that. Lesson shape, we're going to set everything. The left position is going to be a little bit different now because the left position is going to be more dynamic based on where it is. So we can write some code for that. If the day lesson count is greater than 5, so let's write this up under for the left. So before we actually display that, we need to determine how big, in other words, how big is it going to stretch all the way across here, or is it going to be half the size, right? How big is that lesson? Well, if we have more than 5 lessons in a single day, we need to cut it in half. So we can do that. We're going to set the width based on the lesson. So here we can do that. If the day lesson count is greater than 5, then the lesson width, we've already has that as a double, width is equal to, basically all we need to do is this right here, schedule dot cells dot schedule row schedule column dot, I need to know the width of that, the entire width of the column here, so we can do that. That way it's going to expand. Width divided by 2, right? We want half the size divided by 2. Else, then we want it the whole size. So basically all we're going to say is here, if we have more than 5 lessons, we want the lesson width in half. Otherwise, else, we want it exactly the width. Else, lesson width is equal to the schedule row, the width of that. So that's all we need. That's going to set the lesson width inside a variable. Okay, now that we have that, else, we've got everything set up here. Okay, good, I like that. Now that we've got the width set out, what we want to do is I want to determine the left position. So we can do that based on the lesson number. If the lesson number is greater than 5, remember we're looping through the lessons 1 through 4 on the left side, 5 on the right side. So if the lesson number is greater than 5, then the lesson left, that's a long variable, is going to be equal to, in this case, we want the schedule. We can just copy that schedule. Let's get rid of this part. We don't need this. The lesson left is going to be basically equal to the schedule column, the schedule rows, and the left position of this plus what? Plus I need the width divided by 2, the width divided by 2, plus this, the width of the shape. What is it, the width of the shape? This is the shape here. I want the width of this shape divided by 2. Or the width of the column divided by 2. That would work just fine. So let's do that. The width of this column divided by 2. That's going to be the plus the width of the column divided by 2. Okay, let's add that. Let's go ahead and put this down here so it's a little bit easier to read. Then else, then end if. Okay, so we can write in more, end if. Okay, so let's make that a little bit easier to read. So here we go. If the less than left is greater than 5, we're basically going to set the left position on this right side here. So it's going to be the left position of this cell plus 1/2 of the width. Basically, we're going to split this cell into two. Some are going to go on the right, some are going to go on the left. If it's greater than 5, the left position is going to be on the right. Otherwise, it's going to be on the left. Otherwise, so all we're doing is we're setting the left position based on the left number. Else, the lesson is going to be basically equal to this right here. The lesson left equal. We don't have to add anything if it's under 5, okay? If it's 5 or under, I should say. Okay, let's do this. The left position, and they're basically both the left position based on the number. Okay, so that's all we do. We're just basically putting in 2 columns of lessons, but only if it's greater than 5. Okay, now we're ready to set our shape. All right, now we're focused on schedule with the schedule shapes right here. Okay, so we can drop this down here. Okay, so we've already set, all we did with these 2 lines of code, all we did was set the lesson width and we set the left position. So now that we have those variables, we've got the right positions, the left is going to be equal to basically the same as the variable, lesson left. The top is going to be equal to, in this case, we'll update this, the width and the height, we've set it up. So the width is going to be, we want a fixed width on this, and we want a specific top. So what is that top? The top is going to be basically the schedule row. We want the schedule row here, plus 1. Right, we have to add 1 because the schedule row is based on this date row. It's going to be 3. So the first one's going to go in here in schedule 4, right? In 4. So because I don't want to put it on 3, I want to put it on 4. So we need to add 1 for that. So it's going to be the top schedule row plus 1. So that's it for the top position, because this schedule row, it keeps incrementing. As we move through the lessons, it keeps incrementing one by one. Remember here, it keeps incrementing up and up and up. So as we add lessons, it goes up. So the top's going to be a schedule row. What about the width of it? Well, the width is going to be simply that variable that we just created. It's going to be the lesson width right here, WIT width. Okay, so that's the lesson width that we've just created. We've set it here, or we set it here based on that. So we've got the lesson width. What about the height? Well, I want a fixed height. Remember, before we had a dynamic height. This time I want a fixed height. I'm just going to put it at 15. That's going to be easier. The text frame, we've already set the text. This time it's a specific text based on the lesson start time and the class name. On action, same thing on action. Same color. We've already set the color here, so that's no problem as long as it's not 0. Okay, good. So then end with. Now add the lesson expander button. That's going to be the same, but we're not adding any icons. I'm not going to add any icons. So these icons here, I'm just going to remove that. And we can remove the skip icon too. We don't need that. Okay, very good. So that's looking good. So now it's much, much easier. So the expander button is going to be easy, except we have to set the position of that expander button a little bit carefully. Now, so where are we going to put the left position of that expander button is going to be, again, all we need to do is set that. Well, we're going to base it exactly on the shape. This shape that we've set here, we're going to be basing on this. So I'm going to base that expander based on this specific shape. So I'm going to copy that, and it's going to be exactly here. So it's going to be with that, the left position based on this specific shape, but not exactly on that shape. It's going to be, first of all, the left position. We're going to put that probably about, going to be based on the dot left position of that. Plus, I want to know the width of that. So that's going to be placed on the left plus the width of that, dot width. So that means I want to place that little expander shape, place it the left position plus the width, and then I want to subtract a little bit out. I want to move it a little bit, minus 10. So that means it's going to be placed a little bit left. What about the top? Well, the top is going to be, again, the schedule. It's going to be based on the cells schedule row. We can paste the top position based on the schedule row plus 1, right? Because we're not doing it plus 1 because we're bringing it down on that. And then the schedule column here, dot top position, that's fine here. And also what I want to do is base it on the height. The height of what? The height of that lesson shape and the lesson ID. So that's fine here, the way it is here. And then we'll do minus, let's say 8 or something like that. 8 or 9 is fine. Okay, the on action is fine. We got that. Okay, this is good. And then what I want to do is I want to make sure that the lesson text is empty. Clear that out. That's important as we loop through all the lesson text. Okay, very good. So before we go to the next lesson row, what I want to do is update the lesson number. If the lesson number is greater than or equal to the last lesson, I need to reset. Like once we loop, if there's 10 lessons in a day, once we get to 10 or 11, we need to reset it back to 1. So, or reset in this case back to 0 because it's going to be added 1. If the lesson number is greater than or equal to the day lesson count, then the lesson number is going to be equal to 0. So we're resetting that lesson number. Reset lesson number on last lesson of the day. Okay, very good. So that's going to be, and there we go. Now we can go with the next result. All right, so that's going to go above, right? Next result before the next result. Let's put that above. Very important, okay? So that's going to increment the lesson number. Now we can do next lesson result. And we do schedule, clear contents. Okay, that looks good. Everything is going to be good. So let's go ahead and save our work and see how that looks. But before we do that, I just want to set the dates to make sure that we have a full month of dates. Let's do this 5/1 and also 5/30, okay? Do the last day of the month. And of course, once we get these navigation buttons, they'll be set automatically. Okay, so now that we have that, now we can just run our code and then we'll check for any variable issues or anything like that. Okay, lesson database, we need lessons. I think that's okay. Fix that up. That's lessons database, not lesson database. And this variable day lesson, I think it's less count, not. And then let's take a look at that. All we do is lowercase, and if it goes to uppercase, then we know we've got it right, which we do now. Running the code. Okay, let's take a look. All right, that looks good. We got to update the colors. That's going to be based on probably a calculation, but everything looks good as far as the numbers, and then we'll update them accordingly. All right, well, let's fix some of the issues. First of all, what I want to do is I want less space on the left. There's too much space around the top and the left, so let's fix that. It comes from our sample. So let's take our sample here. We're going to format that shape, and then I want to go into the text box. I want the left position to be 0.03 and the top position to be 0.03, and also we can get rid of the right. We don't need those, and we don't need the bottom. I don't need those. That's going to save some space. Okay, close that. Okay, that's going to help us out. Now we'll run our code in a minute, but let's take a look at what else we have. We still need to update the colors. Okay, let's take a look inside our results and see what we have about the colors, and make sure that looks like we have only history and English here, making sure that we're not setting any filters. If we have any filters set, there are none. That's good. And let's take a look inside our results here and take a look at the colors. Okay, so we still have to sort out. We got to bring down our formulas. We didn't bring down the CR. We got to format by date. So let's bring down those formulas, and also we're going to make sure that we got the color right as well. Color is not coming over. We need to formula for the colors, or we need to bring that in. That's not coming down. So let's bring the colors and make sure we get those. All right, that's just the formulas. Here's our formulas down here. Let's take a look at these. And our formulas should be CQ, CR. So let's fix those up here. All right. Okay, inside the code here, going down, our results come here. Our formulas are going to come down directly from here. So let's update those formula results right before the sort. Again, P, R, not Q. That's why our colors didn't show up. CQ, CR. Okay, CQ, CR, not P. Let's run that again. Take a look at the results. Now we've got our colors in here. Good. We've got our results. Everything's sorted. Right, that's the way we like it. Good. I like that. All right, going back into the schedule, taking a quick look to see what we have. We've got our colors here. Very nice. Okay, well, looks like we have some data here that we need, and we don't have any on the first day. What I'd like to do is I want to make sure that we've got enough lessons on a single day. For example, this lesson on Saturday, I want to make sure we add more on a specific day so that we can see what it looks like. Let's do on Saturday. Let's add a bunch of lessons to Saturday. So I'm going to go into the lesson database here. I'm just going to update them make changes to 5.1. So we have one here, 5.1. Let's take a look at why this one didn't show up, because it should show up 5.1, making sure that we have on our schedule and making sure that we have everything set up. 5.2, let's set that to 5.1. Okay, I thought we did that. Okay, but I think we have to update that, no problem. In our navigation, we're going to take care of that. And no problem. Let's run that one more time and get that number 1 in there, the first day, so we can show that. And I'm going to put a bunch of specific pointers on that. Okay, there we go. Now we've got it. So what I do is I want to add more onto that. Let's take a look inside the lesson database. Okay, lesson database here, taking a look. Looks like on the first we've got 5, but I would like a few more, right? I want to add, let's say, 8 or 9 of them. So I'm just going to change this to 5.1, just change the date on the data. And I'm going to do the same thing here. And then the same thing here. So adding those, changing those dates so that we can get more, and then we can see how they look like in the double columns. And I'm going to, of course, run that macro, and we're going to assign that macro. So I'm going to run the macro, and now let's take a look and make adjustments as we do. Okay, it looks pretty good. I kind of like that, right? The expander is a little bit too big. It's kind of too bold for this, so we'll have to update that. But that's exactly the way I want it. Notice how we have showing, and it doesn't show much, but when we click the expander, it's not going to work now because it's basically not set specific. It's just going to kind of get messed messed up, but we'll fix that. Don't worry, because we haven't customized that for the month view yet, but we're going to do that right now, right after fix it. But basically, I want to reset this expander. It's a little bit too big for the month. So all we need to do again is just change that sample, format that, and let's just change it to 0.10. And then we'll do the same thing on the width here. Go back into the format, and then 0.1 is fine for that. That'll make it a little smaller. And now when we refresh the schedule, okay. And now what we'll do is we'll refresh it, and then we'll take a look at it. It's looking really good, and we've made a lot of progress. Okay, good. I like that. It's a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter. All right, let's take a look. So what do we want to do now? So basically, I want to now, and I also need to set the format. Notice it's on seconds. That format didn't take, so we need to update that format. I really want to show 8 o'clock and then AM close. So let's update that. That's the start time format, and that's located right here under lesson start. This is the format that I want to double check. So that didn't work here. Let's try to get rid of this here. We don't need that, and see what that looks like. Okay, update that accordingly. Okay, and the last thing all we should do is we should define it as a text. That'll lesson start as a string. I think that's going to work much better. String. All right, now let's refresh it and do it good. Okay, let's take a look at that. All right, I like that better. That looks much better, and there's more space. Notice we got a so again, we defined it as a string, and it works very nice. All right, good. So now what do we want to have? Well, now all we need to do is set the expander. I want this expander to come out. It doesn't really work right now very well, but let's make it work for the month view. It was designed for the day and the week, but let's expand on that code and make that expander so that regardless of what we have, it's going to expand properly. All right, so let's take a look at that. That's inside the code, miscellaneous code. Here we have here inside the schedule miscellaneous. So show month view, show attendance, and then what we're going to do is after that we'll get the navigation, and then we're going to be done. Okay, so lesson select. What I want to do is I want to expand. I think it's up here. Lesson select and lesson expand lesson. That's the one I want to focus on here. And so basically inside this, when we expand the lesson, I want to write a little bit. I want to update the text frame to whatever we have. So after this autofit, right before we set the text frame, I want to set up something so that we can, right here, I want to set the text. If you remember correctly, inside this particular shape, all we did here in this shape here, if we move it over here, all we did was set the top, but I want to show all of the details when we expand it, because we only have this, but I want to show all the details only when it's expanded. We saved a lot of time by not having it, but when it's expanded, I want to show all the details. So how are we going to do that? Well, we can determine if it's month view. So first of all, if the schedule dot range B3 dot value equals month, then we're going to do something a little bit different. And if, and don't forget the end, Randy. Okay, then we can put something in. So what do we want to do? Well, basically I want to define that lesson text. So what is it going to be? So let's set it up here. So first of all, the lesson text is going to be based on the detail row. We already wrote that up inside the week view and also the day view. So let's just add this. So basically I want to do this here for the detail row. This builds up our lesson text. And again, just as a reminder, what is it based on? It's based on this data here, whether the user has decided to show it or not. Detail here, it's going to be based on this right here. Let's move over to the left so we can see that detail. It's going to be based on whether the user has selected. So we're going to loop 5 through 17 in this case, 5, and then we're going to add the icon. No icon in this case. So we're going to add that. I guess we could in this case 5 through 18 or 17 if we want to add the icon, based on this specific settings, whether they've selected or not selected. So we're going to loop through that, and that's what we're going to do just inside. So I'm going to copy this. We've already built it up. We only have to add a little bit more onto that. So we have to just basically add whatever's currently there plus it. So let's do that here inside, back into the miscellaneous, back inside here. We're going to paste that in. We need variables, detail row. So I'm going to set the detail row as long. We need to add that on. We already have lesson text. Let's add lesson text. We're going to need that lesson text as string. Okay, so once we've got those variables set, we can move down. So now we've got the detail row. It's going to be based on that, making sure if we're on the schedule here, but we're going to be inside. We're already in with shapes, so we do need to keep the schedule because we're inside the shapes. Okay, so we're just simply setting the lesson text. So what I want to do is I want to base it on the lesson text. So what's the lesson text? It's going to be basically equal whatever's currently there plus it. So I'm going to say lesson. In other words, I want to add to it. Lesson text is equal to, what is it? This dot text frame, dot text range, dot text, So it's going to be equal to that. It's going to start out basically all that is the time. Then we're just simply going to add to it. We're going to add to that. And I guess we could add a new line to that, right? So we're adding a brand new line. So all we would need to do is just copy this VBCRLF, copy that, and just paste it down here. So this could be a new line. Okay, so now basically we're taking whatever's currently there, we're adding to it, and then we're going to be displaying that lesson text right here in the text frame. So we need to add that onto here. So dot text frame 2 dot text range dot text equals a lesson text equals the lesson text. So we're adding it to, but only on the month view. Everything, it already has it in there. And I also want to set the width. So I want to know the width. Remember, I want to know if it's a small, right? Let's say it's this small. I don't want to keep the width this. I want to set the width to the entire width of the column. So how do we do that? So we're going to set the width, but only if it's month view. Dot width is going to be equal to the dot top left cell of that dot width. So that's going to be basically all we have to do is sets the width of the shape to the column width. Okay, so now we got, but all that is only on month view. Okay, very good. So we've got that already up there. Perfect. I like the way that that looks. Next up, height, everything else is the same. So also what I want to, when we're resetting the height, when I reset it, I want to make sure that we're resetting it. We need to now reset it the width. I need to know the original width. So when I select on something, I need to know what that width is. Now we can put that in a cell down here. So I want to know the selected width. That's going to go in B30. So when I select the shape, I want to know what that width is, because if it's a full length, I need to know. If it's a half, I also need to know that. So how do we do that inside there? So that's basically on the selection of that. So let's do that. Let's go into that macro, that selection macro, but only on month view. Otherwise, we don't need to send it. So here is the, let's take a look at right here, lesson select. This is the macro. So basically here we're setting all the variables here, setting the room, but I want to know the shape width. So all we need to do is load that when we select something. So we can put it at any place. So let's put it down here. Okay, scrolling down here. Here we go. Then we can put it down here. But it's only a month view, but either way, it's fine. We can just set it here, but maybe we'll need it one day in the future. So B31.B31, double check. I'm going to make sure I got that cell right. B30, excuse me. B30 is going to be that width. So B30 is going to equal, we can just copy and paste that here, this one right here. And then I don't need enter and actual. I can use exact, is fine in this case. And then again, let's just do the width. So that's going to be the shape width. I want to know that original width there, and we'll get rid of that other parentheses there. We don't need that. Okay, so there we go. So the shape's going to equal lesson group shape width. Maybe we better add enter. Otherwise, it's going to be a massive decimal. Sometimes I like that. Or we can use, of course, round 2 with that is fine. All right, so that's fine. It should be sufficient as long as it's accurate enough. So now it's going to be put into B30. So I know when I select on a shape, I know because there could be different. It could be this shape. So when I select on a shape, I want to know what width that is. And I want that width placed exactly directly in B30. I know it's 54. So notice we just added. So when I shrink up, when I go back, in other words, when we expand it, it goes to fully expanded, the whole width of that. But when it goes back, I need to know the original. What is the original? In this case, 54. So we know the width. So now what we can do is when we shrink it back up, we know the width, right? So when we go back into the macro called reset lesson height, the one that reset lesson height, here what we can do is we can say we set the height here, but if dot range B3 is only on month view equals month, then we need to set that. Then dot shapes here we can set again. We can just copy this here. We've already done it here, so that's easier enough. Dot shapes is equal to what is it? Dot width is equal to whatever's in B30. Dot range B30. Now we're resetting it back to whatever it was before because our cell is saving that. Put in note reset to original. Okay, good. I like that. All right, let's take a look. Saving our work, and let's take a look to see if there's any changes that we need to make and updates on this. Okay, I think we're going to also have to change the Z order on this too, right? Because we want it to show up. So that's going to be when we're displaying it, lesson select. What I want to do is I want to display it over all the other shapes, but I want to display the group. Remember the group. So we've changed the Z order here. Let's make sure. In other words, when I select something and it expands, right? When I select and it expands a lesson, as it's expanding, I want to make sure that on the expander, not the lesson, when it expands, this one right here, expanding the lesson, I want to make sure that it's over. I don't want it under any of those shapes. I want to show it over, right? I don't want to see it's under. I want to make sure it's all on top. Okay, and I also want to set the lesson height to make it only when we select it. Notice how that got reversed. The reason that happened is because we didn't set the lesson height on select. We just clicked this. So we want to make sure that we're selecting it first, and then we select that. It's going to remember that. It goes to the top. Notice it's under, and then it resets to the bottom, which is fine, but we want it to go to the top. So how are we going to do that? And we also need to fix this error so it doesn't disappear. All right, so let's set this up. I'm going to run the macro on this so we can add that to that. So we'll call this the month view refresh, so we can just set that, assign the macro here, schedule here, and then month view, and then that's going to be the refresh. So down here, month view refresh. Click OK on this one. So now when we click here, it's going to refresh that month view. Okay, so we got a few things to do, and then the navigation, and then we're done. All right, so back inside the code, all we need to do is make sure that that Z order appears on top. So how are we going to do that? Okay, down here, what we're going to do, we'll do on air resume next in case that group doesn't exist. So dot shapes, and then what is that lesson group name? It's called lesson group. And then, of course, it's going to be based on the lesson ID and the lesson ID. In this case, it's going to be .z order, MSO bring to front. Okay, and then on air go to 0. Okay, let's take a look at that and see if that brings it all the way up on top, which is where I want it right there. Click on lesson, click on there, and brings it to the top. Perfect. That's just what I want. And I want to make sure this one brings it too, and brings it all the way to the top. There we go. So now it's starting up and shows everything. Okay, I like that. It's looking really good. And let's take a look inside our navigation that we've done. I want to get these this month navigation, this month. I want to run those macros and navigate those months. Then we're going to be done. All right, so let's go into the code. We're going to go into the month view and just write a few of those macros. They're very simple. And we're going to start it up here. So what are those macros going to be? Well, the first one is going to be next month. So let's write in. And we just have to write in one, and then we can copy and paste. It's going to be super simple. Schedule, in this case, next month. Okay, but I also want to write one for previous month. Let's copy this, and then I also want another one for this month. So we'll do next month, previous month, this month, right? This month, because we want to select on this month. And I also want to know if we're changing a month or changing a year. So we want to write that too for specific month, or month change and year change. So we're going to write that in schedule. We'll just call this month change, and then year change, and then year change. So in case we're making year, we also want up year change. Okay, so I like that. So what about we want to do for next month? We'll start out with next month since that's our first one. And how we're going to do that? First, we're focused on the schedule, with schedule. Focused on that. Now, I want to know about, first of all, the thing is, it's going to be based on this. If I'm going to previous month, if I'm going next month on this one, and if it's 12, if the current month is 12, how would we know? Well, it's going to be based on here, our month numbers here. So if it's 12, what do I need to do? I need to reset this month number back to 1. I need to increment it up 1. So how do we do that? So we'll just do that. Let's write that up now. We need to run that if-then statement. So if .range B25 dot value equals 12, then what are we going to do? And then else. So then we need to, in December, set to January, and increase year. So that's all we're going to be doing. .range B25, set the month to 1 equals 1, set to January, and then also B26 increment 1 year. So .range B26 equals B26 plus 1. So all we just use, copy this, increment at 1 year, equals B26 plus 1. That's going to increase to 1. Okay, so that's going to increase the year on the drop down. And also what I want to do is I want to make sure that this drop down here, this specific is also increased by 1 too. So not only are we going to increase this, I want to increase the year drop down. So B31 also needs to increment by 1 too as well. So we can just copy this and then change it to B31. And I'm going to differentiate those in the comments so we understand which one is which. One's the month number based on the month. Okay, so this is the drop down. Let's drop down list increment, or combo box, either way, increment. And then also we have the month number based on the date. That's for the date, okay? All right, so we've got B31. All right, but what if it's not? Else, let's put any other month than December. Then it's easier. Then all we need to do is increment the month, December. Then in this case, all we need to do is just simply increase this. All right, so how are we going to do that? B25 equals B25 plus 1. Very, very simple. So Copying this here, just incrementing that month up, equals B25 plus 1. Increment month. Okay, very good. So we've got the increment up. Now, what I want to know is that we need to set. So once we set these, but remember, our schedule is dependent on these two, B4 and B5. So we need to set these, right? So I want to make sure this is always going to be the first. So I'm going to take whatever's in B24, I'm going to place it directly in B4. Then we're going to use the end of the month for B5. So dot range B4 is going to be equal to whatever's in B24. B24, that's going to set the first of the month. We need that before we run our schedule. Set the first day of the month. And also, what about B5? That's the last day. This is the first day of the month. First day of month. What about the last day of the month? In this case, right, B5 here is going to be equal to, we can use application end of month. Application function EO month. That's going to get us the month. What is the date? Well, the date's going to be based in whatever's in dot range B4. That's the initial date, right? All we need to put a date in there. B4 value. And then I'm going to use 0. That means no months ahead, no months back, the exact month. That's going to get us the last day of the month. Then all we need to do is run the macro that's going to simply schedule, refresh the schedule. Month underscore, month view, and then refresh. Okay, perfect. That's it. That's all we need to do. Now all we need to do is copy that and paste that into and make the updates for the previous month. So I'm going to copy this here and I'm going to paste it directly in the previous month. And now in this case, right, in December, decrease, right? In this case, we're decreasing, but not if it's December, but if it's January. If it's January, we're going to set it to December, set to December. In January, set to in January. Set to December and decrease the year. Let's say set to December and decrease year. Okay, so we're decreasing. We're setting it to December. B26, the month number is going to be decreased, so we need to decrease that month number. And also what we need to do is we need to decrease the drop-down list, right? We're decreasing that year. And the same thing, but if it's not the first day, all we're going to be doing again is we're going to be decreasing the month here if it's not in January. Perfect. I like that. B4 is going to be the first day of the month before month view refresh. All right, I like that. That looks pretty good. Now all we need to do is set this month. That's going to be easier. In fact, all I'm going to do is just copy a little bit here, this part, and we can update. This month is going to be super simple. So in this case, all we need to do is set B4 is going to be equal to what? B4 is going to be equal to the current date or whatever's in B24. So on this month, all we need to do is set B20. So let's start out with B25. Dot range B25. Of course, that's going to be our set. 25 is what? Remember, let's take a look at this. All I want to do is, in this case, I want to set the current month and I want to set the current year. In B25, the current month, in B26, the current year. So how do we do that? Well, just a little bit of code. So B25 is going to be equal to the month of the current date, current, and we'll call it current month. And let's just copy this, and then we'll update it to B26, which is the year. B26 here is going to be equal to the current year. So 6, changing that, and this is going to be the year of the current date, year of the current year. Okay, so now we've got that. Now we've updated the current year and the current date. And now all we need to do is set B4 to B24, which is good. Set B5 to the last day of the month. Very good. And then review the schedule. All right, I like that. Month change. Okay, let's save our work. Let's just take a look at that, assign some macros. Actually, we might as well do the last two, then we'll assign the macros since we're already here. It'll be easy. So how are we going to do month change? If I change that, oops, we need a with and end with here. With schedule. Right, can't do that. And then drop that down. There we go. Okay, that looks better. We need that. We're going to be inside the specific schedule sheet. So let's clean that up a little bit. All right, next up, make sure we have our schedule. Everything looks good on these. Month change. That means, what does that mean? That means when we actually make a change to a specific month in this drop-down list, I want to assign a macro to that, and I want things to happen. I want that schedule to update as soon as I make a change to that drop-down list. So how will we do that? We'll do that inside the code right here. So month change, what are we going to do on that? On the month change, again, with schedule, we're going to focus on that. B4 equals B24, no difference than that. So we can just simply copy and paste what we did here. B24 equals this one here. I'm going to change that here. B26 month B4 equals, set the first day of the month, setting the first day of the month here on that. That sets it based on whatever that is, because that's a month change. We're changing that month. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're just going to copy this here. Why does that work so easily? Why does that, let me explain that to you, why that's so simple. We don't have to do any more of that. Because the month number is automatically controlled. As soon as I change this month number to June, right, this number here is going to change to 6 automatically. This number, right, is, remember, this is automatically based on that month number. So all I need to do is, this is going to change automatically. All I need to do is take this 6 and place it directly in B4. And then all I need to do is take the end of the month formula and place it in B5, then refresh the code. So it's very, very simple, a little bit different than the year. So that's all we have to do for that. Month change is very easy. Year change, a little bit different. Again, let's copy this and then we're going to make some updates to that. So the year change, slightly different. In this, what do I want to do? Look, in this, right, we know this, when this changes, this is going to change year. So if I change that year, right now it's on 2021, but if I change it to 2022, it's going to go to 2. So if I change it here, we're going to base this on 2. So what do I want? When this goes to 2, what do I want to happen? Well, what I want to do is I want to look in the admin, and I want to look here. We're going to start it off in admin, B plus 33 plus whatever is in. If it's 1, it's going to be 22. Plus B30 plus 33 or 2022. So basically we're taking B, column B in the admin, we're adding 33, and then we're adding whatever the result is of that drop-down list, 1, 2, or 3 to get to that year, and that's going to help us get to that year. So all I have to do is do that in the code, and then all I have to do is just place that year directly inside where? Directly inside here, B26. So let's do that right now for B26. So year change, dot range, B26 dot values equal to admin sheet dot range B and 33 plus dot range whatever the value is of that code. So where is that located? That's located directly inside B31. So we're adding that. So B31. So that's going to, and then dot value. So basically we're adding whatever this value is, 1, 2, or 3. We're adding it to this. That's going to get us the year located in the admin. So that's going to add in the year. Okay, so also then I'm going to take B20, then automatically B4 is going to change. What do I mean by that? As soon as this changes, it's going to update this selected year, right? So we're going to change this year, B26. This date will automatically change, and then we'll take this date and put it here and then update here. Same thing we did automatically here. So that's it. That's all we have to do with those lines of code here, and then schedule refresh. Okay, let's save our work and start assigning those macros to the newly created buttons. We'll test it out and see how that looks. Make the updates accordingly. So this particular, we're going to assign the macro. That's going to be month previous. So assign macro. In this case, schedule. We're going to look for the month, previous month here. So month previous is the one I want. Click OK. This one's going to be this month. So again, signing the macro. This one's going to be schedule, looking for this month. Schedule this month right here. And then also what I want, this one is going to be schedule month change. So assigning the macro, schedule, looking for month change. That's the one we want. So right up here, month change. And then of course, year change, assign the macro, click here, and then schedule, this is going to be year change. So we're going to look down at the bottom, year change. And then lastly is going to be the next. So assigning the macro here, schedule, going down here to the year change, next month here, this one, that's click. Okay, very good. I like saving our work before we run a lot of macros. That's always a good idea. Check and see if there's any issues. Previous month. Go in again, previous. Let's take a look here. Okay, that looks nice. Let's take a look here. Next month. I like it. Now we'll change the date. All right, update this, change this to May. That looks like it's refreshed. The year is not correct. We do need to update that year. Okay, that looks better. Let's take a look, make sure. Okay, that looks good. I like that. No data in year 22, but data. Alrighty, that looks fantastic. Good. We're going to work to update a little bit next week. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to update this just a little bit. What I want to do is I'd like to do drag and drop. I'd drag it to different days. That would be kind of cool if I can take this and drag it. That's just a little bit of update when I drag it. We haven't done that code yet. Also, when I select on a specific lesson or select on a specific day, I'd like to know all the the details of that day and have them appear here. So we're going to get to that and a whole lot more next week. I appreciate you on this series. If you like this series and want to help us out, we've got I've got 175 of my best workbooks on sale now for just $66. That would support us. Or check out our partners page on the website, excelforfreelancers.com. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.